Hello again. I wanted to talk about the occult fascination. That is the character of the Watchtower and its presidents from the beginning. Why do we say occult fascination? I'm not specifically talking about direct connections with the occult, i.e. the pyramids, etc. Well, that will come up here. It's just a symptom of a larger interest or emphasis, which is upon the hidden things of God. From the beginning, as we all know, if we've studied the history of the Watchtower, they've been fascinated with times and seasons. The very things that Jesus Christ told his disciples in Acts chapter 1 were none of their business. Their business was to proclaim Jesus Christ, his crucifixion and its meaning, and the resurrection of Christ. The church has always done that, even though it's fallen into eccentricities and wrong emphases over the 20 centuries. It's proclaimed faithfully anyway the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ. But the Watchtower from the beginning has been proclaiming something else, and that is times and seasons. Where does this come from? Inasmuch as the book says, and this is directly from the New World Translation, Silver Sword, Deuteronomy 29:29, the things concealed belong to Jehovah our God, but the things revealed belong to us and to our descendants forever, so that we may carry out all the words of this law. So God says, I am hiding certain things from you because the emphasis in your life should be on the carrying out of what I revealed. But of course that's never been the case with the Watchtower. Certainly it wasn't even in the early years, even though they were less cultic than they are now. There was much less emphasis upon life in this world because they were preoccupied with the fact that even in the very first generation they were all going to be raptured up to their heavenly destiny by 1914. So I wanted to allude to the remarks of this man, John Warwick Montgomery. I first met John Warwick Montgomery when I tripped over a very large book of his called The Suicide of Christian Theology. This is when I was still a loyal Jehovah's Witness, by the way, and I was fascinated by that title, The Suicide of Christian Theology. And he was talking about how liberalism had infected the evangelical world, not just the church mainstream, but the evangelical world in the late 60s and early 70s. I read that book and I was greatly impressed by Montgomery's scholarship. I remember thinking at the time, I wish we had scholars like this in the Watchtower, but I had no intention of leaving the Watchtower. Here's a book that he has done that's far more well known than the one I read at first, Principalities and Powers. It's about the occult. It says, a fascinating look at the paranormal, the supernatural, and the hidden things, including prophecy, divination, extrasensory perception, fairies, ghosts, astrology, miraculous healing, and much more. It is very, very good coverage of occultism in general and the nature of its appeal. And here he analyzes the basis of its appeal this way. Egyptian magical practices, especially in conjunction with their elaborate pyramid rites, are probably too well known to deserve comment here. But we must say a word concerning the belief of many present-day occultists that the rites ostensibly to guide the dead through the underworld were actually initiatory vehicles into a secret pyramid wisdom, particularly since not a few Christian writers have attempted to correlate the measurements of the Great Pyramid with the apocalyptic dating in the biblical books of Daniel and Revelation. Even such a stalwart modern saint as Joseph A. Seiss, the translator of the hymn Beautiful Savior into English, wrote a book seriously arguing that the dimensions of the Great Pyramid constitute a valid secular prophecy. Perhaps the most devastating analysis of this issue comes from French scholar Buisson, who notes that by a similar method applied to the Eiffel Tower, if we subtract from the number 1927, that of the steps and landings from the base to the summit, the number of those who partook of the Last Supper, we get 1914. The date of the beginning of the First World War. So the pyramidology was very much in the generation that led up to 1914. I'll have more to say on that in a minute. When we compare the occult activities of the Babylonians, Hittites, and Canaanites, that is, Israel's immediate neighbors, with the position taken on these matters in the Bible of their Israelite neighbors, the contrast is literally staggering. The Canaanites practiced sympathetic magic and gross divination. The remains of Ashurbanipal's great library in Nineveh feature magical and divinatory tablets. Charms and incantations were regularly employed to invoke and palliate a host of demons. Here, particularly, contemporary biblical scholarship finds the Old Testament against its environment. After noting the wholesale prohibitions relative to sorcerers, diviners, and necromancers, G. Ernest Wright, who wrote a book by that title, by the way, The Old Testament Against Its Environment, G. Ernest Wright declares, quote, "The whole pagan world of magic and divination is simply incompatible with the worship of Yahweh." End of quote. So we have done videos on why the Old Testament is so reticent about these hidden things. What does that say about what God's priorities as opposed to pagan priorities? And why is the Watchtower, not alone in this, fascinated with the occultic use of the Bible? That is, to find out from the Bible's text hidden things having to do with times and seasons. So one of the videos we've done before was on the fear. The religions of Babylon and Egypt are characterized by fear, and fear is incompatible with faith. So we have done a contrast with Watchtower religion and emphasis in that aspect. So I'll put that on your screen. And also where we made the direct connection between Rutherford and Russell's fascination with the pyramid. And they used this book alluded to here, Joseph Seiss, who was a faithful Christian, mind you, but had an unhealthy preoccupation with the Great Pyramid, wrote a book about it. So Rutherford was still using that book long after Russell had died. So we did a video on that, which I'll also post on your screen.